and welcome to Crosstalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. Has WikiLeaks started the 21st century's first cyber war? And how thin of a line is there between freedom of expression and an act of terrorism? To discuss what some are calling the WikiLeaks cyber war, I'm joined by Maria Allwine in Baltimore. She is a peace and justice advocate. In New York, we go to Abe Greenwald. He is an associate editor of commentary. And in Oxford, we go to Josh Wright. He is a research fellow at the Oxford Internet Institute and another member of our Crosstalk team, Elena Hanga. All right, Crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want. Abe, I'd like to go to you first. Some people are saying WikiLeaks and its founder are doing God's work. I think you wrote a commentary reacting to that statement. Is God's work being done here? Because there's an enormous amount of praise for people that are anonymous, attached to WikiLeaks, big supporters of Assange. It's a really nice media story right here. What do you think about when we think about it when it gets closer to the ground in our security and other issues?
Well, if Julian Assange and WikiLeaks are doing God's work, then I am baffled as to God's intentions. To my mind, I can't see how ungluing the global diplomatic network to yield almost zero change on the foreign policy agenda is doing anything but undermining diplomacy worldwide.
Okay, Maria, what do you think about that? I mean, how do you feel about what WikiLeaks and people like WikiLeaks and their supporters when it comes to, there is security, we all are interested in that, but then there's freedom of expression. How do you balance the two?
I absolutely believe that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks are doing the work that journalists, very few of them no longer do, that a corporate-controlled media has completely abrogated its responsibility to do, and it is no longer functioning to keep what is left of the democracy here in the United States alive. People need to know what their government is doing, and our government lies repeatedly, has lied, caused the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people in Iraq, Afghanistan, we are operating in Pakistan, we are operating in Yemen, and our American people know nothing about this. It is extremely important that we know about what our government is doing, and I absolutely support Julian Assange and what WikiLeaks is doing, and I hope that a lot more people do it.
Joss, if I could go to you in Oxford, where do you draw the line between hacktivists like WikiLeaks and their supporters and when it becomes a crime, when it becomes a serious issue for security reasons? I mean, a lot of these people are amateurs out there right now, and from the hacking into some of these corporations and all that. From what I understand, a lot of these people are just like buying a package and installing it and pressing a button. Okay, I mean, they're not very sophisticated people at this point. But what kind of message does this send? I mean, how far can you go in this anonymous movement and whatnot before you start going over the line?
Well, I think the first thing that needs to be made clear is that there is a clear distinction between WikiLeaks and the anonymous movement that are perpetrating some of these hacking attacks. The trouble with a group such as Anonymous is that they are by their nature anonymous, and we tend to apply a name to a group of people, and we can use that to think about them and to write media stories about them. But Anonymous is a very loosely coordinated group of people, coordinated via message boards, and it's not a unified movement who are performing unified actions with any kind of oversight or even necessarily sort of thorough judgment. As you've mentioned, the attacks that they're conducting are largely point-and-click tools that you can download from a site. I mean, you mentioned buying them. You don't have to buy these things. They're free for download. They're adaptations of network penetration testing tools and things like that. Without the oversight, a lot of people who are just interested in doing something dangerous or something exciting, and who obviously believe in what's going on, can cause a lot of damage online. So there is a role for this. There is a role for a certain amount of digital activism, which often includes breaking the law. Sometimes, in order to put a view forward, throughout history, people have had to break the law, and we often see laws sort of retroactively brought in to criminalize things that have already happened to stop it happening again. So I think that the anonymous movement is certainly a powerful thing in the media at the moment. It's potentially dangerous, potentially effective. It is different from WikiLeaks, but both of them have their role.
Hey, but I mean, it sounded like civil disobedience was just mentioned right there. I mean, can we put this all in the same category?
I don't think so. It's a tempting analogy to compare this to sort of protests in the material world, but I think it's a bad fit. Think about it in material terms. Let's say you wanted to protest a store or a factory or a company or something of that nature. So you would organize a gigantic protest and you'd fill up the store with people so that it couldn't do business. Now, is that civil disobedience? Maybe. Then you kept filling it up, and then until the floor broke, until the windows popped out, until you did structural damage that needed to be repaired before they could get going again. Is that vandalism or is that civil disobedience?
That's interesting. Maria, what about you? I mean, one of the okay, you want to respond, but one of the issues I have here is that WikiLeaks likes to make governments transparent. But how can they do that if they themselves are not transparent? Go ahead.
Well, speaking from the viewpoint of someone who is engaged in a lot of civil disobedience, who has been spied on in several different groups in which I'm active by the Maryland State Police and many other agencies here in Maryland, let me just say that dissent is being suppressed. Dissent is not really valued or allowed in this country. I've been doing this for quite some time, and I will tell you that I am afraid of my government. Not so afraid that I won't stand up and oppose it, but I am afraid of it. And I think that WikiLeaks' actions are really one of the few avenues that are left to us. Yes, we get out and protest. There were 500,000 at a demonstration before the Iraq War. We were completely ignored. What do you expect us to do? Be silent? I will not be silent. Neither will a lot of people who really love this country and are concerned about, for one thing, its foreign policy, which is actually harming us. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't care what you call what WikiLeaks is doing. I call it responsible journalism. I call it necessary journalism, and I call it activist journalism, since there's a huge void that's been left by the lack of any real serious media in this country, so doing its job, which it's not doing. So I absolutely, as I said before, I support WikiLeaks, and I want to say one thing too. I am absolutely appalled at the scapegoating of WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. If these people who want to scapegoat him wish to engage in that kind of behavior, they need to be talking about the New York Times, El País, Le Monde, Der Spiegel, The Guardian, the New York Times. But no, what they'd rather do is deflect attention from the real issue here, and that is that our government is opaque and engaged in illegal activities, which it's been engaged in for quite some time. You know, they'd rather focus attention on one person, one organization, when in reality, this really does boil down to freedom of the press and the right to free speech.
Hey, Abe, I don't know if you're agreeing or disagreeing. Go ahead.
Can I jump in?
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm disagreeing across the board, but I'd like to ask Maria, since she believes in more government transparency, I have two questions for her. The first is, does she see a legitimate function for a government having any secrets, or should a government have no secrets? And secondly, since WikiLeaks is doing God's work, could she share with us what revelation it has unearthed that she now feels greatly enlightened for?
Go ahead, Maria.
Well, let me answer your second question first. Let's say, I don't know all this business about God's work. I just, that's nonsensical, actually. Regardless, the revelations about Yemen, which I was not aware of, I think are extremely important. You know, we have enormous problems here in this country. Services and government as we know it is being completely done away with. And, you know, the reason for that is that our defense budget is the largest part of our overall budget. It's over 50%. I want to know what my government is doing with my tax dollars.
That's ridiculous.
Which countries it's operating in. And oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. That's absolutely correct. Look, if I'm going to be a taxpayer, I want to know what my government's doing with my money. And absolutely. And I'll tell you something else. If you don't think our foreign policy, it's our foreign policy that is creating more people that hate us and making us less safe, then I don't know what you're thinking about.
You know,
you're just wrong about that.
What about
There's
our
just
actions
no
in
other way
Yemen?
to put it.
What about our actions in Yemen?
What about them?
Are you now satisfied in knowing about? And can government have any secrecy at all that's legitimate in your mind?
No, I think that there are probably some secrets that government might have, but I will tell you that that is not the question to be asked. The question to be asked is, what has our government been doing these last many years? What has it been obscuring and keeping from the American people? And I'll tell you what, the more secrets a government has, the more secrets it will continue to keep.
Okay, I want to go to Joss here, and we'll go back to Oxford here. Is there a worry in your mind that because of some of the rhetoric that's coming out of the United States, and I'm thinking about Senator Lieberman and people like that, that they're going to really tighten down on control of the Internet? Is that possible? Is that even desirable because of these incidents?
Well, from the point of view of control of the internet, actually, before I get onto that, I'd like to respond or to give my view on what we were talking about slightly before. In view of secrecy for a government, I think it's clear that at some level governments require a level of secrecy. I think one of the concerns is that the government is the body that decides what is secret and what is not secret, and that's effectively necessary. I can't see a reasonable way around that point of view, but we need some sort of nuance in what we're talking about when we look at the cables that have been released by WikiLeaks. What's interesting is people tend to divide into two camps. You've got the people that say this is potentially dangerous, this is potentially harmful, people could die as a result of these cables. On the other side, you've got the people saying, look, there's nothing in here, there's no danger, there's no trouble.
Joss, I'm going to have to jump in right here. I want you to continue and return. After a short break, we'll continue our discussion on cyber wars. Stay with RT.